Galen sailed to each of the Iron Islands, urging godliness, and he denounced violence among the Ironborn. Galen put an end to the endless wars of conquest on the Iron Islands when he called for the first king's moot on Old Week atop Naga's hill. Beneath Naga's bones, Galen Whitestaff instructed all the rock and salt kings to choose one king that would rule over them. And Uras Grey Iron, who was the greatest reaver of that time, was chosen as the first driftwood king of the Iron Islands, and he became the first high king of the Iron Islands since the drowning of the Grey King a millennia earlier. Galen Whitestaff crowned Uras Grey Iron with a driftwood crown, and King Uras, who would later on be dubbed as the Ironfoot, would go on to rule the Iron Islands for decades. King Uras would meet his death during a reaving expedition, but his eldest son, Eric the Ugly, ignored the established tradition of the king's moot and presumptuously crowned himself as the High King of the Iron Islands. Though old and blind, Galen Whitestaff urged the Ironborn to rise up in revolt against King Eric the First Grey Iron, and Eric the Ugly would have been killed if he had not abdicated his throne. Galen Whitestaff then proceeded to call for a king's moot on Old Week, in which the Rock King of Old Week, Regnar the Raven Feeder of Haustrum, was elected the High King of the Iron Islands. Thereafter, the precedent of the Kingsmont would not be challenged for centuries, and the Iron Islands entered its golden age. In the era of the Driftwood Kings, the Ironborn would bring great woe upon the people that lived on the coastlines of the Sunset Sea and the Summer Sea. Records indicate that the greatest king that was chosen from the king's moot was Cored the First Whore. Though beloved on the Iron Islands, Cored Whore was feared and hated across all the shores of Westeros because of his savage brutality. For even before he was chosen at the king's moot, Cored had already established himself as a reaver, as he had attacked and sacked the great city of Oldtown in his youth, from which he took thousands of women, thralls, and all manner of riches back to the Iron Islands as his prize. Because of this savage feat, Cored Whore was elected as the king of the Iron Islands, and for 75 years he terrorized the coastline of Westeros. King Cored would rule the Iron Islands until his death at the age of 90. But after his death, the power of the Ironborn would decrease for a time. This was partly due to the weakness of the kings that preceded Cored the Cruel. But the first men of the Greenlands, that had been terrorized by the Ironborn for millennia, had also become more organized. More formidable castles that could repel the reavers were constructed along the coastline of the Sunset Sea, and better warships were made to rival the longships of the Ironborn. The first Ironborn king that faced defeat was King Theon III of House Greyjoy, who was defeated by the combined strength of the Gardeners and the Hightowers. King Theon's captured warriors were then used as thralls by the Hightowers in order to strengthen the walls of Oldtown. In the Westerlands, the people of Fair Isle, who had been ruled by the Ironborn for centuries, rose up in rebellion against the Ironborn and expelled them from their home. 50 years later, an Ironborn named Herrock Kenning sided with a king of the Rock against his own Driftwood king, and together they took the town of Case. Case had been established by House Goodbrother during the Age of Heroes, long before the Lannisters had taken over Casterly Rock, and it had remained an Ironborn stronghold on the Greenlands for centuries. Herrock Kenning, with the help of some whores of the town, took Case in the name of the King of the Rock, and though 3 Driftwood kings tried to retake Case, none of them succeeded. The Ironborn suffered their greatest indignity at the hands of King Gerald Lannister, who is remembered as the Great. King Gerald sailed to the Iron Islands with a powerful fleet, defeated the Ironborn, and took 100 Ironborn captives with him back to the Rock. Every time the Ironborn would raid his shores, King Gerald would hang one of his captives in retaliation.
Lannisters pay their debts.
In the preceding century, the Driftwood kings lost Bear Island, Flint's Finger, and the Arbor due to the power of the kings in the north and the Gardener kings of the Reach. The long-held precedent of the Kingsmont that had bought peace on the Iron Islands for millennia would be challenged after the death of King Uragon, the Third Grey Iron. For after his death, King Uragon's sons tried to interfere with the Kingsmoot so that one of them could be chosen as the High King of the Iron Islands, but instead the Rock and Salt Kings chose Urathon Goodbrother. King Urathon's first act was to have most of the sons of the late King Uragon killed. The only son of Uragon to survive this massacre was Torgon Grey Iron, for he was off reaving at the time of the Kingsmont. Urathon Goodbrother's reign would last for 2 years, in which he brutalized the Ironborn. Torgon Grey Iron would eventually return to the Iron Islands, and he declared the Kingsmont that had elected King Urathon to have been invalid, for he had not been there to take part in it. Though Torgon's argument was idiotic, the Ironborn still rose up in rebellion against King Urathon, mostly because Urathon was cruel to his own people. King Urathon's own captains would savagely kill him, and Torgon, who would be dubbed as the Latecomer, was made the High King of the Iron Islands, without a Kingsmont electing him to the position. But this action would have lasting repercussions on the Iron Islands for centuries to come. King Torgon would rule the Ironborn fairly for 40 years, but like every Ironborn king since Kord I, Torgon the Latecomer also lost a part of his realm. It was during his reign as king that the Cape of Eagles was lost to the Malasters of Seaguard. King Torgon kept his eldest son, Prince Uragon Grey Iron, at his side in the hopes that he could learn how to rule. This is because Torgon wanted his son to inherit the rule of the Iron Islands after him, which was against the tradition of the Kingsmont. And his wish came to pass, for following King Torgon's death, his eldest son Uragon was crowned as the King of the Iron Islands and non-contested his accession. King Uragon IV had a long reign, but he was unable to sire sons of his own. Like his late father, King Torgon the Latecomer, Uragon IV bequeathed the rule of the Iron Islands to his great-nephew, Euron Grey Iron, which once again threatened to undermine the tradition of the Kingsmont. Upon King Uragon's death, his chosen heir, Euron Grey Iron, took up the rule of the Iron Islands, but his rule was contested by the priests of the drowned god who demanded a Kingsmont. Euron Grey Iron allowed the Kingsmont to take place, and the Rock and Salt Kings from all the major islands, together with all ship captains, sailed to Old Week to take part in the Kingsmont. However, when all were assembled at Old Week, Euron ambushed them with his cutthroats, and hundreds of Ironborn were butchered upon Naga's sacred hill. This brutal act marked the end of the Kingsmont, and King Euron, who would be dubbed as the Red Hand after his actions on Old Week, would rule the Ironborn for 22 years. And in this time, he reorganized the political structure of the Iron Islands. He abolished the Rock and Salt Kings, as there would be only one king of the Iron Islands. All the Rock Kings were made High Lords, and the so-called Salt Kings were made captains under the rule of the High Lords. Euron declared that the kingship of the Iron Islands would be passed from one Grey Iron King to another by right of primogeniture, and the driftwood crowns were also abolished in favor for more refined black crowns that would be passed from one Grey Iron King to another. All the Ironborn houses, or priests of the drowned god, that resisted the new order of King Euron were annihilated. In this manner, King Euron Redhand started the Grey Iron Dynasty, and his descendants would rule the Iron Islands for decades. However, the Grey Iron Dynasty caused many divisions on the Iron Islands, and many rebellions were fought during this era. And this division gave an opportunity to the Greenland kings to challenge the already waning supremacy of the Ironborn over the Sunset Sea. King Garth VII Gardener was one of the Greenland kings that delivered a great defeat to the Grey Iron Kings as he drove them out of the Misty Islands. Afterwards, King Garth renamed the Misty Islands as the Shield Islands. It was the eventual arrival of the Andals to the Iron Islands that led to the downfall of the Grey Iron Dynasty. Several Ironborn houses allied themselves with Andal settlers in order to depose the Grey Irons, and the last king of the Grey Iron Dynasty, Ragnar II, was not only deposed as the king of the Iron Islands, but he and his entire family were wiped out. The Ironborn families that had removed King Ragnar from power then played the finger dance in order to get a new king. In this game, the aspirants for the crown threw axes at each other, and the opponent had to catch it mid-air. This was a risky game, as one could lose several fingers or even their life in the process. Lord Harris Hoare was the eventual winner of this dangerous game, but he lost 2 fingers in the process. However, it is also widely believed that Lord Harris became king of the Iron Islands because he had married an Andal princess, and he therefore had the support of powerful Andal knights that had settled on the Iron Islands. King Harris, who is remembered as the Stump Hand, went on to rule the Iron Islands for 30 long years, in which time he established the Hoare dynasty. But like the Grey Iron dynasty before, the Hoare dynasty was little loved by the Ironborn because of the association of several Hoare kings with the Andals who were mistrusted by most of the Ironborn. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment and subscribe to the channel.